So let's start with this one. I believe find whichever side has C as the point for you on your notes. And what we're going to do is use this compass right here that you see to basically construct a perpendicular through C. What I've told some people in the past is sometimes it is easier for people to realize holding the compass straight up and down is probably not the best way to use it. Pencils don't work very well that way. So you want to have it tilted in some way, shape, or form, either forward or back, whichever way you're more comfortable with. And what some people have done in the past is they've kind of cleared off their desk and they actually turn the paper instead of turning the compass. They leave the compass where it is and they just turn their paper a little bit. That tends to keep people a little bit more accurate as well. But you have to find whatever strategy works for you. So notice that one very important thing is to realize that when you start, the tip of your pencil and the tip of the point should be fairly, when you put it all the way together, should be relatively close. And I believe for you, the adjuster is a little different. This one's one of the turn adjusters. I think yours is just an open and a close kind of to move the pencil. You do want them to be relatively close together if you actually close your compass. Okay, that's what helps it work properly. Obviously, I don't have to adjust because, well, it's a computer. It just put it where it was supposed to. All right. But please keep in mind, while I'm up here, every once in a while, some weird things may happen because the actual overlay of this compass is much bigger than you think. For example, just watch the right side of the line. Do you see how it's kind of hovered right now? Notice how big this is as I move it over. There, finally, it starts getting. That's how big this is. This overlay. Okay, do you see how it finally just started seeing the line there? So if anything weird happens, just hang with me there, and hopefully the computer will catch up. All right. So the first thing you need to do is get to a comfortable setting. It really doesn't even matter. When I mean setting, I mean open, close, something like that. Get to where you're comfortable. And what's going to be very common here is you're actually going to put your point on the point. You're going to find that being very common, and that's an easy way to say it. Put your point on the point. And so you notice right here, I tried to put my point on point C. What we need to do is put some marks on this line so that we have like a reference setting, I guess you could say. And so for me, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a mark to the left of my point. But don't change your setting because you want it to be the same distance on the other side. Okay, so just get to something very comfortable. You don't have to make it any particular measurement. It's just something that you can actually make a mark with. So go ahead and make a mark to the left of point C. And keep that setting wherever you had it. And that's why they're kind of newer compasses, so that's kind of nice. They don't move. Once they get older, they just start moving on you without doing anything. And then you can just go over here and say, well, I'm going to make the same mark on the right side. So something similar to that. Some people have kind of chosen in the past to make the entire circle, but that can get very confusing because you're going to have enough marks on some of your constructions as it is. So let's maybe not put more on there than we need. Okay? And earlier today, this wasn't working very well. It's supposed to work, but it was being, well, very naughty, I guess you would say. And it worked very well there. Do you see how I just put those black dots on there? Because we have created, there's an intersection between that arc and the line, correct? I've basically created two more points. You can call them A and B or just not label them at all as far as I'm concerned. I don't really care about those. We're trying to make a perpendicular here. So obviously, have we made a perpendicular yet? No. So we really haven't made any progress at this point. We've made some very nice looking symmetric marks on our paper. And that's about it, right? And has everyone been able to get that far? Got a mark on each side? Now here's the trick. When it's on the line, what you need to do, now you go to that new point, right? Put the point on the point. We made a new point. Doesn't matter which one you go to, not really. You're going to go to both of them anyways. And go to that point. So I put my point on the point. But what you have to do is you have to make your opening or your setting. Do you agree now if I put it right in there, it's going to hit C, right? I mean, doesn't that make sense? Because I haven't moved it, right? What you have to do is you got to make it a little bit bigger than that. Okay? Because what we're going to do is we're going to go above and below, and we want them to actually hit each other. If I leave it here, they're going to hit each other at C is what's going to happen. And so we'll just make it a little bit bigger. What it has to be is more than halfway, so that's okay. Is that more than halfway? Would that be okay? Yeah, but maybe you're not comfortable with it being that big. And when I say halfway, I mean between these two black points. Maybe they're points A and B, who knows, right? And that's more than half. Do you agree with that? And then what you're going to do is just go above point C somewhere, right above it, see something like that, and make a mark. And maybe go back and forth a couple times, make it really nice. Now the book says you only have to, or the notes you have there says you only have to do above. You can also do below if you'd like. There's nothing against going above and below. You don't have to technically do both. But we are going to have some other constructions as we go along that you do need to do both. And so maybe if you just get in that habit, well then, if it's not going to hurt anything, you might as well do both, right? Okay. Well, this just looks like a couple of green arcs and a couple of red arcs. That doesn't look like a perpendicular line to me. What do you suppose I'm going to do next? Well, this is a very important thing. Don't lose your setting at this point. You have your setting. What am I going to do? I've used one of the points. Go to the other one. Don't lose your setting. If you do, go back and measure it again. If you lose your setting, just come back here and make sure that it lines up with the arc. Okay, that's all you got to do. So then come over to the other one. How's everybody doing? Everybody all right? Is their compass behaving? All right. Yeah, oh, look at that. Those two hit each other. That's amazing. And then you come up here, and you do something very similar. And hopefully now you have kind of a, I guess we could call them an X, huh? And they're not really an X, obviously, because it's curved. But we've, again, created a couple more points. Now, again, the notes say you only need either above or below. I like to do both because you're going to need it eventually. And here is where your straight edge comes in handy. If you did it properly, the point on top, this black one at the top where the green two hit, the black one at the bottom where the green two hit, and C should be on the same line if you did it properly. Well, let's find out if I did it properly. Again, I'm cheating just a little bit. Not too bad. Missed it by just a little bit. I think that's just because the board needs to be orientated, though. Well, there you go. What would we know at this point, then? We wanted to create a perpendicular. Do you believe we have done so? It sure looks like it, doesn't it? So is it okay if we've actually constructed it to put the markings in? Sure it is. So what's that? And again, this is probably when it won't work. Right angle, correct? We know that for a fact, right? We don't have to guess that. We actually know more than that. We actually know, yep, that's the one that's not going to work, isn't it? We know that these are the same. Let's try a different color. Maybe it'll work. Nope. Well, when all else fails, you just go to other methods. We know that that is congruent to that, don't we? Didn't we make them that way? Right? Do we know the other ones? If I go from just that black dot to the middle and that black dot to the middle, would those also have to be the same? Would they have to be the same as these other ones? That's an interesting question, no, isn't it? But we made it bigger, right? So is it going to be the same? No. But I think we can agree that that is congruent to that. Very interesting. That'll prove important here in a little while. But let's recap what we did. The very first thing we did is we needed to relate that point to the line somehow, so we made the red arcs. Right? We just picked a setting, it didn't matter, we made the red arcs. And then we had to get a little bit bigger because you notice now, when I talk about it, if we went back here and we made the arcs with the green arcs without moving it, do you see how they would just hit C? And nothing would happen? They wouldn't hit above or below, would they? They'd hit at C. And so we had to make them a little bit more than halfway, and we made a green arc on the top and the bottom. And then we went to the other point we just made, top and bottom, made another point, and there it was. Actually, when you think about it, quite simple. And quite exact. There's no guessing, oh, did I mark the 90-degree angle properly or not? Well, you don't have to worry about it. The compass does all the work for you. So what should I do first in regards to, now C is way over there, isn't it? Do you think that might cause some kind of problem for some of you? Actually, I'll leave it over there for a second. Right? Well, how would you do this if you don't have enough room? Are you allowed to extend it? And what should you use to do that? Your straight edge. Of course, I can cheat because I can just do this, right? But unfortunately, your papers won't allow you to do that. But yeah, you might want to extend that line if you don't feel comfortable with it. And if at any point someone feels comfortable enough to come up here and use that compass, just let me know. You see which dots kind of do what and where you have to hit to make the actual arc. So if you ever feel comfortable with that, you're fine. So how should I start this? I need something on the line as a reference point, right? And so you pick a setting, whatever you're comfortable with. I know I'm pretty comfortable with that setting. Put your point on the point. That's pretty good. Would making an arc up here be very helpful where I'm at right now? I mean, would that be helpful way up there? Oh, not really. But if I move it down here a little bit, maybe that might be helpful. Right? Yeah, we'll make one over here. Now you see what I mean by just turning the paper might be easier. Sit there and turn the paper a little bit when you get it set up, right? And so if I could turn the smartboard, I would. Okay. Yeah, we're doing the same thing. We're going through C, right? In this particular case, do you think if I go to make my next marks, is keeping it that same setting going to get me anywhere? No, it's going to hit C, right? Okay. And so that's not going to be very helpful. Let's see, we got a new point here. Maybe I'll label them this time. That's point. It doesn't like labeling very much, does it? A. Oh, well. You get the idea. I could type it in there, but as I said, sometimes this overlay doesn't behave very well. All right. And maybe it'll work now. Maybe it had a little break. Nope. Still not going to work. So that's A. We'll say the other one's B. All right. And so if I use this, it's no good. I have to make it bigger. Because right now, that again, if I made my next arc, if I put it right here, it would hit C. That's not very helpful. Let's make this blue. Okay. So we got to make it bigger. Do you think that's sufficient? Is that okay if it matches up to that other arc? Yeah, that's fine. All right. And so points on the point, and we got to go up above. Now remember, technically you only have to go above, but I like to be really accurate, so we'll go below as well. Well, that doesn't look like much of anything. Looks as though someone gave the compass to a 3-year-old. And they just started making things. Well, there's only a few more steps. I did that point. I did point A, so let's go to point B. What do you think? That's pretty good. Alrighty. And then once again, I'll just use my straight edge here, which is that one, of course. Not bad. Good, pretty good. Obviously, keep in mind you have a very, well, simplistic compass. There are many compasses out there, and I have one exactly that's a little bit more elaborate that actually locks in place. And then it won't move until you allow it to move. Obviously, that would be much more helpful than these. These are, though, inexpensive, and so that's why we use these. And also are not metal. Because I have seen those metal ones taken apart and those little sharp arrows shot through rubber bands. And they hurt. All right. Once again, we know quite a bit. We know some stuff's congruent up there. And again, that'll be important in a bit. Are there any questions if we have to make a perpendicular that has to go through a point if the point's on the line? Reference points on the line, make it a little bigger and go up and down, right? Well, on the back, you're going to find out, well, what is it that we do if that point is somewhere else? Do you think it's still important to have some kind of reference to the line? Some kind of reference point on the line if I want it to be perpendicular to that line? Well, of course. Back here, they were fairly easy, the red ones, right? That referenced the line. The point and the line were referenced by those red marks. Well, here we're going to make some green marks, apparently, that reference Z and the line. Something very important here. Once you get a favorable setting, don't lose it. You have to keep your setting here. And in fact, that might be something you might want to write on your notes. Off on the side, say keep the setting for this side of the notes. And on the other side, you could say maybe something important is more than halfway, right? Would be something important for the other side of the notes. One thing that won't change here is where I'm going to put the point of the compass. Where should I probably put the point? On the point, right? And so you do that. Obviously mine is not so at this moment. So put the point on the point. And we need 2 reference points on the line. If I were to make an arc right now, do you agree the arc would kind of come through here? It would hit twice, right? Maybe. So I probably am going to want to make mine a little bit bigger. Well, maybe not quite that big. Right, like that? Do you agree that it'll arc through here now and hit it twice? Because we need 2 reference points. So let's find out. And what I do with this one is I actually just do the whole arc this time. Some textbooks suggest you just make a little arc over here, make a little arc over there. I like to do that because then I feel confident that I have done a fairly good job making that arc. Obviously, if my arc doesn't look anything like an arc, we've done something wrong, right? And just make sure it hits it twice. You may have to extend your line again, you never know, but you have a straight edge that will do that for you. And remember, what was the important thing I told you about this side? Don't lose your setting. It's huge. You don't go more than halfway and all that stuff here. You have to keep the setting if it's not on the line. Well, if I don't change the setting, where should it, again, we've created new points, right? Maybe I should highlight that. Right, we have these new points again, maybe A and B. I don't like black one, right? So again, we're going to take our point and put it on our new point. It's kind of the progression it goes through, right? If I put in, again, I told you to do above and below, right? But if I do above, where should they hit each other? If I haven't changed my setting, they better hit each other at Z, right? So do you really have to do above? It could be a good check if you want to, right? But again, don't change your setting and just go down here and say, well, that looks like a pretty good spot for my arc. And again, this just looks like, you gave this to a 3-year-old, right? Green and red, and it looks very colorful and lots of nice little arcs. But it really doesn't tell us anything at this point, because there's one point I haven't dealt with yet. So you got to put the point on that point, because it's feeling left out. And there you go ahead. Again, if I made an arc above, it better hit Z, right? So you can go ahead and make those if you want. That's completely up to you. And it looks as though we have another point here. And once again, I will cheat with my straight edge. Well, hopefully I'll actually hit the point next time I try it. There it is. Ooh, I'm a little off. Not too bad. There it is. Do you believe that line is perpendicular? Does it look so? It does. And we don't have to, you don't have to convince me, because we constructed it that way. So you can put a right angle in there. It's not an assumption at this point. You constructed it properly. It is a right angle. And how about this black dot that's where the green and the black come together to the middle, where that line is? Do you think that's the same as this one over here? It better be, right? Okay. And from that point Z to the middle, and from this point down there to the middle, guess what? Those are the same too. Okay. And what truly becomes important in some of these is, what if you start doing this? What happens with that? Okay, so that, well, hopefully, when you see it somewhere else, it looks a little better than that, but you get the idea. So why don't you try example 2? I'll walk around and see how you're doing, and I will help you. Again, it's not on the line, so you will use the strategy for not on the line, which is the one that says keep your setting. Okay, so you're going to try something similar to this one, right? The Z is below. Okay. All right. Just so that you know, many students have tried in the past. It's not like I sit there and watch you all the time, but students have tried just using the protractor on these and constructing a perpendicular. You could probably get pretty close, right? But then they try. Then either one of two things happen. They don't put any construction marks in at all, so then I know they obviously didn't do it. Or they just slap in some construction marks afterwards. I can tell if the marks are coming from the correct location, so don't try and just throw stuff in there. All right? So of course I have to put the point on the point. No big deal, right? Maybe. Oh, there we go. Well, that setting, do you think that'll be sufficient? Probably not. It's probably going to come short, isn't it? So we got to make it a little bit bigger, because we would like to hit that line twice, right? Is it okay that it's that big? Yeah. Okay. And as long as, when you go and do this, where's my little scroll bar? Oh, well, we'll figure it out. Don't lose that setting. So there's my new point right there. There it is. I could probably move it a little bit if it'll let me. There we go. Is that going to be good, do you think? Yeah, probably. Yeah, and point on the other point, because we haven't used it yet. Yeah, it looks pretty good. And let's see if I can actually hit the point this time when I do it. So I'm a little off. Pretty close. Once again, we know it's perpendicular. And we know a lot of congruent statements that we can make at this point. It's not assumptions. It was constructed that way. We know it's that way. So any questions on how you do it, whether it's on the line or off the line or anything like that?